Story 1. I was lectured countless times about friends pressuring me into drugs. Nobody prepared me for a friend pressuring me into helping them move. Story 2. Watching family grow older, friends leaving to live their own lives, and the reality of parents passing away someday. This is part of being an adult. Story 3. No longer is there a set path. There is no more going to school, graduating 2 years later, then moving on to college or university. It used to be so easy. Now I have to create my own timelines and goals. Story 4. No matter how much sleep you get, you'll always feel tired. Something will ache, and you'll constantly worry about having cancer or other diseases. Story 5. The thought of working over 40 hours, 5 days a week, only to stop and enjoy the benefits when we are nearly at the end of life is concerning. Story 6. You could be smarter, more educated, better looking, and more charismatic than the other person. But still, that person has a better salary than you because they happen to know the right people. Story 7. The slow realization that all the adults you thought had their lives together do not, in fact, have their lives together either emotionally or financially. The number of adults I encounter who are unstable is astounding. Story 8. How unbelievably lonely you can feel if you don't have a partner or children. You reach a certain age and all your friends have their own families and partners. Your own family has children and your parents are gone. You become the eccentric uncle or aunt with no children, no partner, and perhaps a pet. There's no one to talk to about your day, no one to ask about yours, no one to care for you when you're sick, and no one to look after. Your friends have their own responsibilities and can't spend as much time with you, and new friends are few and far between. Finding new friends your own age with the same amount of free time is nearly impossible. So, you spend time with a younger crowd to get some social interaction, but you worry about being labeled negatively when you're in your 40s and hanging out with those in their 20s, so you try to avoid that. Story 9. My wife has cancer. How many of us truly understand what we are expressing with those wedding vows? In sickness and in health. I meant it when I said it, and now life is filled with changing bandages over severe wounds, draining colostomy bags, and flushing catheters. Nothing could have prepared me for this. Story 10. Non-stop chores. If it's not laundry, it's dishes. If it's not dishes, it's mopping. If it's not mopping, it's fixing something. Story 11. That moment when you realize you are the same age as your mother was in your childhood photos, but you feel nowhere near as put together as she seemed back then. It really hits differently. Story 12. What menopause would be like. When I was a kid in health class, it was explained that as you get older, you stop having periods, and that's menopause. No one explained perimenopause to me, what the symptoms were, or how long it can potentially last. No one told me you need to go 12 months before you're officially in postmenopause. It would have been helpful to have known some of this information. Story 13. Everything, taxes, laundry, credit, etc. My mother took great care of us but did a poor job of preparing us for the world or life after her. Story 14. When you are a child and make poor decisions, you are sent to your room without dinner. However, when you are an adult and make poor decisions, it can cost you thousands of dollars, cause you to lose your car, your house, your job, or even lead you to prison. Sometimes it involves all of these consequences. Story 15. Learning that your elderly parent who did not prioritize saving, investing, or maintaining financial stability has recently retired from a low-level job after an unremarkable career and is now coming to you for help, while you are juggling your own responsibilities to your spouse, children, career, and financial goals can be challenging. However, they refuse every single solution you suggest. Story 16. When you've had your morning bathroom visit, washed your hands, and started cleaning your teeth, you then realize you need to go again. What is that all about? Story 17. Figuring out what to make for dinner every night for the rest of my life is the hardest part of being an adult. Story 18. Having my entire life fall apart in less than 3 years, starting with the sudden death of my wife before we were even 30. Story 19. To me, it's about realizing that my parents are growing old as I become an adult. Losing them is my greatest fear. Story 20. Going through the worst breakup of my life and having to go to work has been incredibly challenging. I dated someone who emotionally abused and controlled me. When I decided to leave, He began harassing me and threatening to expose me. He stalked me and called me from unknown numbers, demonstrating his worst behavior. Enduring this while forcing myself to go to work and attend to my students is very difficult. Story 21. The realization that becoming an adult is mostly about keeping things together while feeling like you are barely managing. No one really prepares you for the constant balancing act. Story 22. All of them. In school, I learned how to operate a sewing machine but not how to balance a checkbook or do my taxes. It was assumed that a future partner in my life would handle the finances. I graduated in 1978, 1 year before women were allowed to have their own credit cards. Story 23. Managing money has always been a challenge for me. My parents were not skilled at it and never provided any guidance. As a result, I did not take money management as seriously as I should have, and now I am facing the consequences in my late 30s. Story 24. Looking for the adult in the room and realizing you are it. Suddenly, you find yourself surrounded by people who do not have it nearly as together as you. Story 25. Disability and chronic illness can happen to anyone at any time. I am 25 years old and have to attend doctor's appointments, blood tests, medical treatments, and similar commitments approximately 1 to 3 times a week. My life revolves around my health issues. I can work 2 to 3 hour days, 5 days a week when I am doing well. That is the most I am capable of on my best days, though I rarely experience good days free of pain. I do not remember what it feels like to have no doctor's appointments or hospital visits scheduled for the week. Socializing is difficult because I have to consider my dietary restrictions, blood pressure, blood sugar, sensory needs, and allergies, as well as ensure I have all my necessary medical equipment in case of an emergency. Preparing to go out for more than 2 hours takes about 1.5 hours, not including the time it takes to get dressed and do my hair. I thought limitations like these were something that happened to older individuals, at least in their 80s, and not even to all elderly people. Yet here I am at 25, unable to live without support and unable to engage in many activities I would like to because of the various restrictions imposed by my health issues. I have to be extremely cautious when eating and ensure that the place I choose handles food properly. I have even fallen ill from merely smelling something to which I am allergic. I cannot join friends for lunch without bringing my own food and risking a severe reaction. I dislike how my needs impose restrictions on those around me. My siblings cannot enjoy the birthday cakes they desire because of ingredients to which I am allergic. We must carefully plan every family outing to accommodate my medical needs. At only 25, I feel that this is not how life was meant to be. I never had any time to enjoy being an adult before I transitioned to being a burden on those around me in a different way than I was as a child. Story 26. How ridiculous dating life is. It seems to come easily to some people while the rest of us jump through hoops for nothing. Story 27. You have to figure things out, and there is no safety net anymore, especially when you are supposed to be the safety net for the family. Story 28. I think I have been shaving incorrectly for 15 years. No one ever showed me how, and my father shaved every day. Thank you, Dad. Story 29. The disillusioning realization that the world you spent your childhood preparing for does not exist, and that most of the things you thought you knew are completely false or propaganda. Story 30. Having to be completely self-reliant in the face of overwhelming pressure can lead to collapse under the strain. Story 31. Nothing ever stops unless you make it stop. And no, the thoughts don't go away when you grow up. They get worse. Life is challenging. Nothing stops unless you make it stop, and you can't make it stop unless you break. Additionally, you feel tired all the time. Story 32. I was always told about taxes while growing up, but I was never taught how to handle them. As a result, I experience intense fear every year that I might be doing them incorrectly. Story 33. Last night, a bear ate one of my deceased chickens from the trash, scattering it everywhere. It then left a large mess to mark its territory in my yard. I was not prepared for how hilariously the universe can turn tragedy into comedy. Story 34. The slow dissolution of friendship bonds. Work demands more and more while giving less and allowing less freedom. Never feeling like you have enough time for yourself. Being in a relationship where you have to beg the other person just to see them maybe once every few months. An 8-hour workday leaves you with barely a few hours at home. 2 days are not enough to recharge. Feeling like you will never have your own home or be able to move out because everything is extremely expensive. Suicide seems like a viable option given the state of the world. Story 35. Having to pay bills every month, make a grocery list every week, cook dinner every night, and do laundry every single day for the rest of my life has made me realize I was not prepared for adulthood to be so incredibly mundane. Story 36. Moving up a generation. It never occurred to me that one day I would be a mother, my mother would be a grandmother, and my grandmother would be gone. Story 37. Everyone warned me about peer pressure to use drugs. No one has ever pressured me, but watching all my friends getting high and being so happy while doing so has made me want to use drugs. People should really warn you about that. Story 38. I moved abroad a decade ago, and the COVID-19 pandemic delayed a visit to my home country. By the time I went back, I had been around typical people so much that I could no longer tolerate my parents' behavior towards me. It was a slow descent into a crushing realization of what happened to me and my brother while growing up. It was so overwhelming that I had to seek psychiatric care, which has been very helpful. Story 39. Seeing all of your friends and family in happy, healthy relationships and engagements while you have been the third wheel waiting for someone you can call your own. Story 40. No matter how old you are, you probably won't feel much more mature than you did in your late 20s. Parents often seem like they don't know what they are doing. We are all just figuring things out as we go and doing our best, trying to be at least a little better than our own parents, while finally understanding why they acted as they did. Story 41. Realizing that time is precious and learning to decide who earns my time is a skill that is developed over time. Is it worth my time, energy, and money? If any of these aspects don't work, it's not worth my time. Story 42. Having to figure out what to cook every day until you die. No one told me adulthood came with a never-ending episode of What's for Dinner? Story 43. Deciding what to eat every evening for the rest of your life and the endless cleaning of the kitchen. Story 44. How even senior citizens still haven't wrapped their minds around what they learned in kindergarten and behave inappropriately. Story 45. I would say figuring out how a relationship works with your spouse is important. My parents were high school sweethearts, married at 20, and started a family at 22. To this day, I have never seen my parents argue. Fast forward to today, I have been married for 25 years, and I often feel like I am not doing this whole marriage thing right because my husband and I certainly do not have it all together. I was never taught communication or confrontation skills, or even how to have a conversation back and forth with someone without getting overly defensive. Story 46. How to manage finances. Like everyone is investing and multiplying their money. Has it been taught? No. It is basic knowledge, yet many people do not understand it. Story 47. Other adults can be incredibly uninformed. Sometimes they express views you might not expect, and often you are expected to just let it go because you have to respect differing opinions. Story 48. I was talking to a coworker about this. As an adult, there is no one to tell you how to navigate adulthood. You are expected to know everything automatically. As a child, you have someone guiding you constantly. But as an adult, unless you have parents actively involved in your life, there is hardly anyone to turn to with questions about important matters. No one prepared me for that. Story 49. I need to prepare for everything. First aid, food, clean clothes, work lunches, emergency funds, hygiene, sanitation, and more. It requires a lot of planning and resources to feel comfortable in your own home and personal life. Story 50. How quickly food spoils even when cared for properly. I swear I buy fresh fruit from the store, and the next day it withers away to nothing. Story 51. Doing everything right and life still feels challenging. In school, if you studied hard and completed the homework, you received good grades. In life, you can do everything correctly, and difficulties can still arise. Story 52. Being an adult means being around other grown individuals who do not act like adults. Many are still trapped in their own past, pretending to be adults. Story 53. The hours spent folding laundry and finding the motivation to clean the house can be overwhelming. I will do it, but it can be frustrating. I like things to be clean, and I hate clutter, which is what motivates me the most. Story 54. Cooking and managing money are important skills. I was advised not to get a credit card, similar to how a child is warned against certain actions, but the reasoning was not explained in a way that was clear or helpful. Story 55. Carrying the responsibility not only for myself but also for my children in all regards is absolutely fantastic. However, it also involves a constant consideration of the good and bad choices that may greatly impact the future of the people I care about the most. Story 56. Budgeting. No one taught me how to handle money, and I don't think I've ever had savings. However, that's probably because I'm a graduate student who lives off a stipend. Story 57. Hard water damage on taps. What do you mean? It's water on something that is supposed to handle water. Story 58. I was not prepared to learn about some family secrets from the past. It makes you not want to be around people you thought you could trust. Story 59. Insurance, bank fees, cell phone plans, and timeshares are essentially scams. Why was there a class on baking cookies but not a class on contracts? Many people have been misled into buying poor quality cars because the dealer claimed to have lost the keys, only to promote a more expensive model. Just sign here and drive away now. This education is far more important than why Lewis didn't like Clark. Story 60. Still needing guidance. As a child, I was always told that when I became an adult, I would stand on my own 2 feet and create my own life. I have done well for myself, but I still need guidance. There is a child within me who would like someone to lead the way, and I believe that to some extent, this desire never goes away. Story 61. So-called semi-smart people would vote for an individual in orange makeup not once but twice and declare that the multiple divorcee and convicted felon would be a multi-felon, while not wanting us to be atheists. Story 62. You can do everything right and still end up living paycheck to paycheck your entire life because banks, the government, and pandemics can continually disrupt your progress whenever you seem to get even a little ahead. Story 63. Home and car repairs. I was never taught anything useful, so now I have to pay people to do these tasks or attempt them from online tutorials, often without success. Story 64. Hemorrhoids. I wish I had been taught to make better nutrition choices throughout my youth because they started to become a significant annoyance for me in my 20s. Story 65. Needing to spend the day at the hospital because your son thought he saw black spots in his vision and an AI suggested he might be going blind. Story 66. The unknown can be daunting, as it leaves us unsure of what will happen and how to address the challenges that lie ahead. Story 67. Growing into adulthood and reaching a certain age, I look back at events from my childhood and youth, events that took place when my parents were also at that age. I realize how flawed, selfish, and outright wrong I now feel as an adult about how they acted during those times. For many years, I had a very loving and sympathetic view of my father, who endured a difficult relationship with my stepmother, an alcoholic with what I suspect was borderline personality disorder. By association, my sibling and I were subjected to this situation throughout our early to late teens. We endured it together and often viewed him as much of a victim as ourselves. As an adult, now with my own teenage children, I genuinely wonder what he was thinking to persist with the path he chose during those times. I still love him, but we rarely speak. He knows why, although neither of us has ever explicitly stated it, and my sympathy and respect for him have taken a significant hit. Story 68. Having to leave home and not being able to go back. Sorry, Mom and Dad, I am not going to spend my life in my hometown. Story 69. Life can be challenging. You have to work 5 or sometimes 6 days a week to avoid going hungry, pay bills, and tackle various problems that arise, such as rent, cooking meals, and washing dishes. Can be exhausting and was never meant to be this way. If you want to enjoy something fun, it often requires spending money. Feels like a scam. Story 70. How to survive in this challenging job market. It was not like this when they were starting out. Technology has changed everything. Nowadays, a lucrative field can become obsolete in a matter of years. You can either choose a stable and traditional career, which will also require constant updating, or spend the rest of your life facing increasingly difficult challenges. Story 71. That you have a place for all things in your house, but somehow everything gets put on the kitchen table, and you ignore it all for weeks because you think people will put their stuff away. Story 72. The trauma you endured during your childhood and adolescence to meet expectations eventually becomes unmanageable. You then have to choose how to deal with it. You can self-medicate and see how long that lasts, project it onto others and see the outcome, or you can commit to therapy and attempt to rewire your brain at 30, wondering if it will be effective. Story 73. Finding oneself in burnout during adulthood due to previously undiagnosed or misdiagnosed neurodivergence. Story 74. I am working myself to the bone. I knew I would have a job and was prepared for that. However, I have been putting all my time and energy into thinking about work, leaving me feeling like I barely exist in the few hours I am home before I go to sleep and start the cycle all over again. Story 75. When the rug gets pulled out from under you and everything you try keeps failing or feels insufficient, your problems begin to multiply and compound until there seems to be no end in sight. Story 76. There are numerous side effects of being pregnant that health classes often overlook. For example, the influx of hormones can undermine dental health, making regular dental visits during pregnancy essential. Additionally, many women are misinformed by doctors about their legal reproductive rights, even in progressive states. This issue is often influenced more by personal beliefs than by considerations of health and well-being. Story 77. Zero work-life balance, no social life, and poor food quality because I cannot earn enough to feel secure in my expenses. Story 78. The importance of obtaining an education with good financial prospects is significant. I grew up with the belief that pursuing a passion was essential, which is great, but no one ever suggested that I study a different subject as a backup. Interests change over time, and the notion that you can only pursue one thing can be limiting. Story 79. I struggle with the fact that outside my family, I do not matter at all. As soon as my kids leave the house, I will have lost any real meaning in my life. It is depressing, and I am scared that I may have only 5 to 7 years left of being important to anyone. Story 80. My parents wanted to maintain the same level of control over me that they had when I was a toddler while they began to develop dementia. My mother grounded me at 28 years old and confiscated my license plate. Story 81. That moment when you realize you can't just buy something because you feel like it anymore. Everything is now calculated with the questions, do I really need this? Or what else could I do with this money? Story 82. Realizing that the people you admired in your youth are not the exceptional role models you believe them to be, especially if they contributed to that idolization. Story 83. Losing your parents can be emotionally challenging. I was deeply attached to both of them. Although our relationships had their rocky moments, I miss them both intensely. Story 84. Depression has been an adult issue for me. I used to think it was somewhat fabricated, but it has hit me hard. It is difficult to explain how I feel or why. It is frustrating to find the energy to engage in the activities I once loved and built my life and hobbies around. Story 85. Having to attend the funeral of a friend is difficult. We have reached this stage in life, and suddenly you receive a message that someone you have known since the early 2010s has passed away. Story 86. How frustrating it is that more than half of the population lacks understanding. It is surprising. In my 20s, I believed that older individuals possessed knowledge I did not, and therefore their opinions had value. Now, in my 30s, I am coming to realize that this is not true at all. Story 87. The first time you hear, 401k, start contributing at your first opportunity, especially if your employer matches any part of your contribution. If I had started my 401k the first time it was offered, I could have retired 10 years ago. Instead, here I am at 65 with no signs of retirement in my future. Story 88. Perimenopause and menopause in general. My mom always acted like you just woke up one day and never had a period again. I still don't know what age she was when it happened for her. Story 89. Kindness withers. I don't know if it's an adult problem or living in a hyper-individualistic society, but it's tiring to realize that everything revolves around an agenda. Story 90. Admitting to yourself that sometimes you need to be humble and ask for emotional help is important. Even mild depression can significantly impact your life. Story 91. Cleaning an entire space from top to bottom regularly is exhausting and frustrating because it never ends. I could set aside the entire weekend to clean, and as soon as I turn around, it needs to be cleaned again. I wish I were rich enough to own a robot vacuum. Story 92. When you reach the point where you have watched both your parents pass away due to cancer or forget who you are due to dementia, and you lack the support person you always believed you had, it can be overwhelming. Yes, you may have children and a partner, but the bond with a parent is different. Nobody prepares you for that. No one prepares you for childhood cancer when your child is diagnosed with it. You must be strong for your child because you are their parent, even when all you want to do is fall apart. Life can be gut-wrenching. Story 93. Your bills are paid, and then you have to go to the dentist. Additionally, how can you incorporate more protein into your diet? Story 94. Growing up on the lower income side prepared me for many physical and financial tasks, but a significant one is consoling adult friends during hardship. When I was younger, with safety nets in place, it was easier to help them since they might make irrational decisions, such as quitting a job or making poor financial choices, while in the moment. They could rely on family for support. Now, as older adults, I observe them making the same mistakes without savings or funds in the bank. It creates a fine line between saying, "Look at what you're doing," and trying not to come off as insensitive. Providing tough love is definitely a skill. Story 95. Regretting all the things you wish you had done differently. People often try to tell you, but they cannot make you understand until you have lived it. Story 96. When you grow up and mature, you think that once you become an adult, the people around you will also begin to mature. Unfortunately, high school drama still exists in adulthood, and you have to listen to it all. Story 97. My mom has started acting like an irresponsible child, making it other people's problem. It is not dementia. It is her natural personality coming out now that she has decided her kids don't need her anymore. She can finally let her hair down. The fact that we are dealing with a perpetual adolescent is something my coming-of-age experiences could never have prepared me for. Story 98. I had great parents, but I don't think there was much actual adult preparation when I was younger. I am 62 now, and I am still figuring things out. Story 99. Sexism and misogyny are pervasive and ingrained in the fabric of American culture, preventing many women from realizing their potential and attaining a minimal level of financial stability. Story 100. My mother is the oldest of 5 siblings and helped raise some of them. She was the matriarch. My grandfather fell off the roof right after I was born and was paralyzed. She was a nurse and took care of him, teaching her mother how to perform many tasks for his daily care. She ran the family while my grandmother cared for my grandfather. She was a strong, independent woman who ran a business and raised a family. My dad was never around before the divorce and disappeared afterward. She did it all. She was one of my best friends and an authority figure during my upbringing. Now, at 78 years old, she has dementia. She is still the sweetest lady you'll meet, but has very little understanding of what is happening around her. I miss my old mom, and selfishly, I am angry about missing out on spending my adult life reminiscing with her. She does not remember much from my childhood except a couple of stories she tells repeatedly. I realize it is worse for her, but it is still difficult for me. I feel angry for both of us. Every once in a while, she pops back, and I get maybe 30 minutes to an hour with the real her before she fades back to her new hazy self. Story 101. The first time you are completely alone, far from anyone else, and you hear a sound, you must be brave to discover what it is without any backup. Story 102. At some point in adulthood, you may accidentally wet or soil your pants due to medical issues or excessive alcohol consumption. Story 103. Trying to keep my head above water while authoritarian oligarchs dismantle the federal government, destroy democracy, and reduce any remaining agencies, protections, and services to rubble. Story 104. Deciding what to eat is always a challenge. I'm glad I'm not choosing between unhealthy options and foraging for food in the woods, but I'm truly out of ideas for dinner. Please, no more Pinterest recipe links. Story 105. With divorce rates for first marriages ranging from 40 to 50%, many individuals are not adequately prepared for the negative consequences of that uncertain situation. Story 106. You can easily hurt yourself doing normal things. For instance, I have tennis elbow from snow blowing my driveway. I got the snow blower to avoid hurting my back with a shovel. Story 107. Finding a job can be challenging. Without connections or experience, you may end up working for companies like Amazon or Walmart. Story 108. Not sure this is an adult problem, but I really thought that entering my adult years would somehow make me feel more adult, or what I perceived as adult. I thought I would be smarter, more confident, and more patient. Yes, I have gained more experiences and knowledge, but I really thought I would feel different inside. Story 109. Getting dumped in my mid-40s was tough. My former partner cheated on me with someone I consider to be undesirable. When we first got together, I was attractive, athletic, and had a wide dating pool. Now I am 20 pounds overweight, which is manageable but still a work in progress. I have sagging skin and breasts as a single mother. I struggle with trust issues and new psychological challenges, thanks to betrayal trauma, and I feel that my life would be better if I gave up on finding other partners. I worry that I will die alone, but that seems like a better option than experiencing the pain my ex caused me again. Story 110. To cope with the feeling of losing control of your life while, in reality, your life is just changing can be overwhelming. It is a difficult feeling and often seems unfair. Story 111. I am an American. The dream is obscured by issues the administration covers up: obesity, addiction, and poverty. The excitement in public reflects a lifestyle openly expressed. In personal gatherings, people seek connection and often lack supportive surroundings. Trends are important, and home life is a critical aspect, not to be overlooked. I hope genuine interest develops in addressing these serious matters. Challenges arise from the pursuit of popularity. To express one's experience through existence, no one can convey it quite like I have. That is a breakthrough. You are open and intent on embracing this message and sharing positivity. Good luck. Story 112. Things in your house randomly break. In the past year alone, the extractor fan, a blocked pipe, the washing machine, the back door hinge, garden slabs, and the shower head have all needed attention. When you live at home, these issues get fixed behind the scenes. Now I'm the one trying to fix them. Story 113. Aging. My family was very Catholic and never discussed their health issues. Illness was considered a sign from God that they had sinned. Here I am, trying to navigate this at 55, and I have no knowledge of my family's medical history or how to manage my pain, which is not helpful in a doctor's office. Story 114. Losing your job has significant ramifications on your entire life. If you have a family, the impact is even greater. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.